These refs, okay, let's get into it.
Here we go.
The worst year of refereeing I can remember in quite some time.
I think there is a fundamental problem in the way that officiating has been tweaked and changed over the last 10 to 15 years.
Was that catch by Isaiah likely a touchdown?
It was for sure a touchdown.
These refs are very important to the game. And when they are asked, they need to hear about it.
Really what it comes down to is accountability. And I think that's what the fan wants.
Possession, 2 feet down, that's a touchdown.
Some of our highest trafficked stories in recent weeks have been about officiating blunders.
This guy's behind the guard before the ball's even snapped.
Now, if I go to the ground, I got to maintain possession. You know what I'm saying? He ain't go to the ground.
Will the NFL ever look at the refs and possibly revamping it for the future? It's normal to miss a call once in a while, but they are now taking over games with bad penalties every week.
He ain't bobbling the ball. Him and the defender not like sharing it. He got the ball clearly like this, took 2 steps. You knock it out after.
They're not following their own script or their own verbiage.
The competition committee, I think, is doing too much as far as points of emphasis and rules changes from year to year.
The DB even thought it was a touchdown.
Take away a fumble recovery for the New York Football Giants against the Philadelphia Eagles, clear and obvious to everybody but the refs.
I like, oh, touchdown, damn. See, I knew Pittsburgh. I went downstairs, came back upstairs like, damn, that wasn't a touchdown? What the hell going on?
I asked BA this morning, hey, anything you want to talk about? We need to talk about these refs.
But where do we even start? This is former NFL quarterback Drew Brees, holding the Super Bowl trophy back in 2009. This is also former quarterback Drew Brees, but this picture is from nearly a decade later. He's now 40 years old, and his arm strength that wasn't amazing to begin with is quickly declining. His coach, his teammates, and the fans all recognize the same thing. This is dude's last chance if he wants to hoist the Lombardi Trophy ever again. In the fourth quarter of the 2018 NFC Championship game, with just a little over 3 minutes left on the clock, this man threw 3 passes that should have sent this team back to the Super Bowl, bro. The first one was a crucial check down on 3rd and 2 that he converted to keep the Saints drive alive. The second one was a bomb to wide receiver Ted Ginn, placing the Saints in field goal range and position to take the lead. Before you know it, they're met with another 3rd down. And if they don't get it, sure, they can kick the field goal, but they would leave nearly a whole 2 minutes on the clock. Plenty of times for the Rams to mount a drive of their own. The Saints go for the kill. Brees drops back and throws a wheel route, trying to connect with a wide receiver out the backfield. The DB is in great position to make a play on the ball, but the pressure gets to him and he completely panics. He commits an obvious foul for pass interference, and he does it directly in front of the ref. But to everyone's surprise, even the other team, no flag is thrown and is ruled incomplete. The Saints sideline loses it. The crowd wants blood, and the NFL will never quite feel the same again. I was actually at this game. A former sponsor had actually put me in a suite. And when I tell you the ceiling started falling down right after the ref just missed this call, I was honestly worried that was gonna be a riot. And if they did riot, bro, I couldn't even blame them. If this obvious penalty had been correctly called, the Saints get a first down on like the 6-yard line, take a couple knees, run the clock all the way down, then they kick a game-winning chip shot field goal, and this dude returns to the Super Bowl. Instead, the refs completely smoked the call. The Saints were forced to kick a field goal without the benefit of running the clock all the way down. The Rams get the ball back, tie up the game, and end up winning in an overtime period that in reality never should have actually happened. Then they turn around and get wrecked in the Super Bowl. Fans get robbed of Brees versus Brady. We talking about a game that could have had major implications on how Drew Brees is remembered. We talking about legacy. A legacy game between the GOAT and one of the best of his generation, completely erased out of reality, all because of bad officiating. Welcome to the NFL.
Are they dropping down a level right now? Are the refs getting worse right now at the clear and obvious? BA.
Quality from week to week is getting worse.
But that was 6 years ago now, and if you ask most fans, the officiating's only gotten worse since then. And there seem to be some pretty straightforward steps that the league could take to outright fix or at least improve the horrible state of its officiating. So then there's only one question that's left to ask. Why won't they fix it? After going through articles and videos from around the internet, there seem to be 3 general camps or trains of thought on how to answer the question, why won't they fix officiating? Now, some of these will overlap in certain areas, and even some in the same camp might differ on a couple details. But I'm gonna try to give you a neat distilled version of each train of thought. The first one starts exactly where you'd expect. The first camp believes it comes down to money. The league has no problem spending money as long as it guarantees a financial return. And on the surface, of course, there's nothing wrong with this. This philosophy is embedded within any kind of business, but businesses also make other claims, specifically about the principles that govern them. And those principles are used to attract and garner trust from their customers, right? So when they don't at least show a valid attempt at actually trying to live up to those principles, it might take a while, but problems will fester as the company gets further away from their promise. The NFL often talks about the integrity of the game as, quote, the most important thing. The money camp isn't necessarily even holding them to that standard. They just feel like if you're saying it's the most important, don't then turn around and completely ignore it. Every move the NFL's leaped on with urgency, like expanding the season or having games overseas, have all immediately translated into more money. And though nobody asked for those things, they were full steam ahead. But based on their lack of movement towards improving officiating, this camp believes the league doesn't view improvements in that area as an investment that will render financial return, and they think that's the primary reason they haven't addressed it. The viewership is still going up, the empire's still growing. To the league, that means it's not broken. So why fix it? The second train of thought is control. Today's video is sponsored by Live It Up. For the past few months, every single morning, I spent some time in my Bible as the very first thing that entered my brain when I wake up. And let me tell you this, dog, that done made a huge difference. My first drink of the day since I was like 12, and you can honestly talk to my grandma about that one. But my first drink of the day is coffee. That's how I start my day. My second drink of the day, also coffee. But then, okay, around 10 a.m.-ish, that's when I like to drink a couple bottles of water. And today I'm here to talk to you about the second bottle, because that's the one that's usually gonna get something mixed in it. Recently, that's been Live It Up Super Greens. It's an all-natural greens powder for daily health that support things like less bloat, digestive health, and more consistent energy, helping to protect you from that afternoon crash. It's dairy-free, gluten-free, sugar-free, sucker-free, and it's made with organic vegetables. So the thing about dietary supplements, and I have tried a lot, but they're not strictly regulated by the FDA. This means companies are responsible for verifying their own products, which is why it's such a big deal that Live It Up Super Greens uses third-party testing. So what they tell you is in here is actually in here. Super Greens is an easy and healthy habit that can start or continue a habit stacking pattern. If you want to try out Live It Up Super Greens, click the link in the description and use my code Carl15 to get 50% off during the holiday season and get a free shaker bottle if you subscribe. Shout out to Live It Up once again for sponsoring the video. Without further ado, it's time to jump back in. The second train of thought is control. We saw once again last weekend, the league still struggles to consistently determine what's a touchdown and what's not. This is the most basic principle of the game. If we don't even know what a touchdown is, bro, what are we doing? What's the reason the rules need to be so convoluted and hard to understand? Seriously, why? It's gotta come down to one of these two things. Either the league is too incompetent to write enforceable, understandable rules that breed a level of consistency, or they want everybody confused. Maybe this is a case where Hanlon's razor applies. If you're not familiar, Hanlon's razor says, quote, never attribute to malice, but is adequately explained by stupidity. But maybe Hanlon's razor has dulled over time, because I think it's easy for smart people to use this in reverse and commit malicious acts while allowing them to be misconceived as stupidity. The control camp think it's all on purpose. They look at it like this: as long as the refs are consistently inconsistent, it becomes impossible to prove whether outcomes are being forced or if the refs are simply incompetent. I'll admit, bro, it's hard to believe that the NFL has become the dominant force that it is today by being a group of happy-go-lucky dum-dums. Given what they've achieved and how well they've executed their growth, you gotta consider the possibility that this could be intentional. But what would be the motive? Like, why would they do it? Now look, I'm not outright accusing them of this stuff, but their potential incentives are easy to list off. It gives the league wiggle room. When everything's subjective and super inconsistent, the league could influence outcomes without you being able to prove it. They can even force wins, especially in the playoffs, around a certain player or team they want to market around. They could punish certain owners for not playing ball. They can reward other the owners. If they have a team who just moved to one of the biggest markets in the country, they could even pull some strings to get them in the Super Bowl. And now, because they're directly advertising sports gambling and working so closely with sports betting companies, they simply have to accept the fact that there's no way to prove that these consistent bad calls aren't tied to gambling. I mean, it looks bad. And the thing is, if they're really concerned about this perception, you'd think they'd be doing everything that they could to improve officiating. But by ignoring it and keeping it the way that it is, whether intentional or not, they open the floodgates for refs to influence outcomes of games, catering the point spreads. Bro, it's so inconsistent, it just leaves room for really easy manipulation. Now, the third train of thought is the entertainment argument. It's one that I like to call unstoppable growth. This one basically says that the league is so focused on bringing in new fans that they're either ignoring basic building blocks of the game, like officiating, or worse, they actually enjoy all the chatter, feel like it adds drama, and think that all press is good press. I don't really agree with that one, but it does go in with this train of thought. We've seen many rules change to favor scoring more points, even at the detriment of the finer details of the game. The league's been leaning further and further to the entertainment side of their business, and they're starting to lose portions of the actual sport. Again, being fair to the league, this could be tough to balance. Don't lean far enough to the entertainment side, you can very quickly become baseball. But lean too far into the entertainment side, and you can very quickly become pro wrestling. It's not a shot at pro wrestling, they're very successful, and I respect what they do. It takes talent and skill, but it's clear that the NFL's main selling point is the fact that they are an actual sport, supposedly unscripted. Nothing's predetermined. There's a reason you can't bet on pro wrestling matches. The NFL is playing a dangerous game, one you often see played by top companies that are understandably focused on growth, but issues arise when they completely lose sight of what got them on top in the first place. They sometimes get caught up catering to or trying to woo new audiences, that it begins to happen to the detriment of their current audience. A great recent example of this is Call of Duty. We're talking about a game that pretty much everyone's played. But if you were ever really into the Call of Duty community, you know that under the success lies a sea of discontentment. For years, COD has lamented its own fan base. At certain points, they seem to be making changes to directly punish their core customer. But they can do it because those core customers had nowhere to go. They were caught in the trap. They started pumping cartoon garbage into what used to be a military-style arcade shooter. The fan base complained, but the new customers were loving the new design, and the company was making money, so they kept on doing it. The game was even willing to actively punish their core audience, trying to attract a bigger one. This was despite being the largest FPS game in the space for, well, over a decade. It took a long time to play out. Matter of fact, it took years, but slowly that arrogance came back to bite them. Earlier this year, Activision was asked about competition from Battlefield 6, and somebody at Activision had the hubris to reply with an all-time freezing cold take. They opened up their mouth and said, quote, "Call of Duty is too big to fail." That's probably what the Philistines said when they sent out Goliath. Then the game underperformed, got outsold, and the company quickly went into panic mode. It wasn't until then that they started making concessions, things that fans have been begging for years and years. But up to this point, they've been completely ignored. A lot like the NFL with their officiating problem, Call of Duty even tried to gaslight their fans into thinking they were crazy, only to later admit that the fans were actually right all along. And this third camp believes the NFL is in the same boat. In recent years, the NFL has implemented things like the Taylor Swift cam, and at one point, those games were getting record viewership due to her fans. Some people believe this further incentivized the league to favor the Kansas City Chiefs. They believe the integrity of the sport was placed on the back burner to satisfy this brand new influx of eyeballs, many of whom couldn't care less about the actual sport. And it's funny because now a UTEP study has actually confirmed that there has been officiating bias for the Chiefs, at least in the playoffs, where it is most important. Regardless to what you think about the study, it does add some level of validity to what had been written off as a fan conspiracy. And maybe you're not sold, but you'd have to admit that when you align this and this, along with unrest from a large part of the NFL fan base, in theory, it sets up a potential crime, a motive, and a whole bunch of witnesses. Maybe there's drops of truth within the ideas of all of these camps, but I want to take a look at a little bit of history that might help us outline how officiating got to the spot it's in today. Welcome to the 2012 referee lockout. So back in 2012, the league and its refs were unable to hash out a new collective bargaining agreement. One of the major snags in those contract negotiations, the NFL was trying to freeze out these dudes' pension plans. So for the first 3 weeks of the 2012 season, the league was reffed by replacement referees. And as unsurprising as it is, this was an absolute disaster. That massive failure gave the real refs a crazy amount of leverage in negotiations. They got the NFL to agree that in the offseason, you can't even pick up the phone and call these cats. Like for real, there's a mandatory blackout period. And I ain't gonna lie, it's funny because I know the NFL is used to getting the best of everybody in contract negotiations. So for the refs to hit them with that one, while it is hilarious, it would be cool if the league could make them get some extra training. To fire one of them is extremely difficult, and they minimize the accountability that the league could enforce as much as they could. We talking low accountability. In the short term, I'm sure it seemed like a big win for the refs, but in the long run contributed to where we are today. So like I said, man, that 2012 lockout and the horrible performance by the replacement refs put us on a path to no longer know what a catch or a touchdown is. Now, initially, I thought these negotiations might also be the reason refs don't do interviews. But the more I look into it, bro, from everything I found, that's not the refs doing. That's the NFL. Why? When you think about officiating, naturally, you think of the refs. They're the face of the biggest problem in the league. I honestly question whether or not it's even possible to be what fans would consider a good ref in the current NFL system. I don't know if it's possible. For years, I have called for ref accountability. At the very least, they should have to sit in a press conference and answer questions after the game. And I'm not arguing that they would want to, but when you look into it, bro, it's not the referees or the referees union. It's actually the league who mandates that they can't be interviewed on camera. So we look at that situation and say the refs are being protected, which is another reason why we look at them as the bad guys. But what if the refs are being protected by the same guys who are setting them up? Wouldn't that mean that those guys are actually just protecting themselves? Let's go back to the aftermath of that 2018 NFC Championship game I opened up with. After that horrible missed call, the following year, the league implemented a brand new rule. For the first time ever, NFL coaches would be able to challenge pass interference calls. Everybody agreed that if this call had been reviewable, the flag would have gotten thrown and the Saints would have most likely won this game and went to the Super Bowl. So it made sense to make pass interference reviewable so that something like this would never happen again. However, by the end of that season, it was determined that this whole challenge experiment was actually just a huge waste of time. We was all crazy for questioning the refs in the first place, and things would be returning to normal following the season. But something wasn't right. That entire season, senior vice president of officiating, dude named Al Riveron. If you ever looked for pictures or memes of NFL refs and came across this one, yeah, that's Big Al. But in this story, he'd already worked his way up the ladder. Or if you prefer, climbed up the flagpole. So as I was saying, my boy Big Al was not a senior vice president of officials, and throughout that 2020 season, reviewed 101 pass interference calls. And out of those 101 reviews, only 24 were actually reversed. You might say, well, maybe the refs were just doing a good job, and upon further review, they were right most of the time. Problem with that takeaway is that multiple officiating sources identified another 50 PI reviews that Riveron judged incorrectly on, quote, any reasonable scale of review. This comes from an ESPN article by a journalist named Kevin Seifert. He went and spoke to reputable officiating sources, and I ain't gonna lie, I don't know exactly what that means, but what he called reputable officiating sources, and according to them, not random fans, but according to them, the numbers should have been a lot different. So according to them, out of 101 review calls, 74 of them should have been overturned. That's correct, bro. 75% of the calls on the field were actually wrong. But kind of how Call of Duty did its fans, we were, whether intentionally or or unintentionally kind of gaslit into believing that this whole thing was just a waste of time. The refs had it. Of course, they wasn't going to be perfect, but only 24 overturns out of 100. We can get rid of this rule because we really don't need it. Now look, this is the first time I've seen these numbers, but I watched this in real time, and I've complained about this over the years. And my assumption was that it was the referees' egos that made them pretty much just refuse to overturn these calls, almost in protest of even being able to be challenged. So my eyes didn't deceive me. They wasn't overturning obvious calls that should have been overturned. But this same article has given some evidence that I didn't have before, which has pretty much reinformed my opinion. According to this, it had nothing to do with the referees' egos. There's actually a very logical explanation. So according to the article, CFL executives said that it took them a full 3 years before they were able to find a solid standard for reviewing pass interference. But the NFL had a PR nightmare on their hands, and all they cared about was putting out that fight. The only way this was gonna be successful was that they had to establish a reasonable standard to either add or remove a foul via review. The NFL assigned the responsibility of coming up with this standard to our boy Al Riverine. But again, it took the CFL 3 years. They only gave this man a matter of months. Riverine had the final say on every replay. He made the call from the command center up in New York. Bro, by week 2, it was obvious that he never figured out that standard of contact. He ended up letting an obvious miss slide on Monday Night Football, Eagles versus Packers. This ended up making the refs on the field seem completely complicit, like they were blatantly refusing to overturn the calls. But upon further review, the evidence once again points to the league's favorite fall guy. They got set up again. Bro, this got me rethinking that whole season. I remember the refs just seeming really annoyed, or sometimes they would just have like an apathetic smirk every time a coach challenged pass interference. Now I'm thinking that they was probably looking like that because they knew there had never been a standard established to reverse the call. Every single time it was just a coin flip. That train wreck went on for the whole 2020 season, and immediately following the season, the rule got reversed. The NFL pretty much looked us in the face and was like, well, we tried. This only added fuel to the blazing fire that would span distrust of the league and its officials, and it caused many fans to have to pick sides. Half went running back to the status quo. They wanted to forget the no call ever happened, but the other half's trust of the league was damaged so bad that it could never be recovered. Today, that half is likely grown to the majority as distrust for the league's grown year by year. I know y'all remember the NFL script meme that went viral a couple of years ago. Things like that end up growing legs due to real distrust of the NFL. Now, fortunately for them, it quickly slid into parody, allowing it to be written off as just a joke. But in recent years, penalties have been highly inconsistent, with the league hardly ever admitting their mistakes. Add to that the league's dealings with sports betting companies, and the fan distrust just keeps on growing. Despite all that, the league hasn't done anything meaningful to improve its officiating, instead just opting to leave the system completely broken. So while good refs are being held back by a bad system, bad refs are actually being protected by it. So half of the refs is trying to put out the fight, while the other half's doing dirt under the cover of smoke. Based on the way that human nature is, you have to assume that some of these refs have developed a taste for being able to operate with impunity. They've adapted so fully to a bad system that they wouldn't know how to operate if it did get fixed. So now I fear that we're in a situation where neither the league or its refs even want to fix the problem. So unless the time comes when they're forced to do so, they probably won't. Unless, coming up in May, the deal that the league struck with the refs back in 2012, it actually expires, and the league is already making a few of their requests publicly known. Now, the replacement ref saga went so bad that the refs probably still have a whole lot of leverage. But given how poor their performance has been as of late, maybe some of that momentum swings back to the league. Of course, we'll have to wait and see if anything changes, first on paper, then on the field. All right, man, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, man, share it, maybe subscribe to the channel. Of course, the likes are always appreciated. So let me know if y'all feeling this type of content. I've actually done a video specifically on the referees from that NFC Championship game. I found out a lot about them, and you might not agree with the takeaway, but the information itself is actually good. If you want to check that out, click here on the screen. May God bless y'all. I'll catch you next time.